The darkness pressed down like a suffocating blanket across Henderson Field on Guadalcanal. Heat radiated from the ground even at 2200 hours. The air hung thick with moisture that made every breath feel like drowning. Private Robert Young Deere, from the 164th Infantry Regiment, ran his fingers along the familiar metal of his M1 Garand rifle. Sweat beaded on the weapon's surface despite the late hour. His unit had stepped onto this cursed island just 11 days before. October 13th marked their arrival date. They became the very first U.S. Army formation to launch offensive strikes against Japanese forces. History was being written with each passing moment. The soldiers now crouched in foxholes next to Marines. Those Marines still clutched their bolt-action Springfield rifles. The Army men gripped their semi-automatic weapons instead. 8 rounds sat loaded in each unblocked clip. Through the oppressive humidity came the endless drone of insects. Then another sound cut through the night air, a sound that turned blood to ice water in American veins. Thousands of Japanese voices erupted from the darkness. They screamed "Banzai" at the top of their lungs. They shouted "Totsugeki" with murderous intensity. The enemy charge had begun. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto, from the 29th Infantry Regiment, pushed his platoon forward through the undergrowth. His Type 38 Arisaka rifle felt clumsy in his hands. The weapon stretched an incredible 31.4 inches in barrel length alone. Dense vegetation caught the rifle at every turn. The 5-round internal magazine held 6.5 by 50 mm Arisaka cartridges. Each shot required him to work that bolt-action mechanism. Up, back, forward, down. 4 movements for every single round. Behind him, newer troops carried Type 99 rifles. These fired more powerful 7.7 by 58 mm cartridges. But they remained bolt-action weapons, still limited to 5 rounds before reloading with stripper clips, still requiring manual operation between each shot. What was about to unfold in the next 12 hours would change everything. Savage combat would demonstrate American infantry's overwhelming firepower advantage. The Japanese had never anticipated this technological gap. The difference between semi-automatic M1 Garands and bolt-action Arisaka rifles would prove decisive. More decisive than any tactical manual or strategic doctrine. Industrial innovation and mass production capabilities could determine infantry combat outcomes. This was the world's first truly modern war. The battle preparing to erupt at Henderson Field would reveal a fundamental truth. Japanese soldiers displayed extraordinary courage and determination throughout the Pacific. But they fought handicapped by rifle technology from the previous war. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action provided devastating advantages. 8-round capacity meant more shots before reloading. The powerful 30-6 Springfield cartridge delivered exceptional stopping power. American forces could achieve rates of fire that Japanese infantry simply could not match. This disparity in small arms capability would multiply across thousands of engagements, from New Guinea's steaming jungles to Iwo Jima's volcanic ash fields. The advantage would contribute significantly to eventual American victory throughout the Pacific theater. The M1 Garand emerged from the brilliant mind of Canadian-American designer John Cantius Garand. He began his work at Springfield Armory back in 1919. 17 long years of development, testing, and constant refinement followed. The U.S. Army finally adopted his revolutionary design on January 9, 1936. America became the first nation in history to issue semi-automatic rifles as standard infantry equipment. The rifle fired the powerful 30-06 Springfield cartridge with devastating effect. A 150-grain M2 ball projectile left the 24-inch barrel at 2,150 feet per second. This generated 2,656 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The genius of Garand's design lay in its gas-operated rotating bolt system. A small portion of propellant gas was captured from a port near the muzzle. This gas drove an operating rod that cycled the entire action automatically. Each trigger pull fired one round. Gas pressure automatically ejected the spent cartridge case. The same pressure chambered the next round without any manual intervention required. A trained soldier could fire between 40 and 50 aimed shots per minute accurately. Bolt-action rifles could only achieve 15 to 20 rounds per minute at best. The 8-round en-bloc clip inserted from above into the fixed magazine. A practiced rifleman could reload completely in under 3 seconds. The development process had faced numerous challenges along the way. Early prototypes used a primer-actuated system that proved completely unreliable in testing. The rifle was originally designed for the 276 Peterson cartridge initially, but General Douglas MacArthur intervened decisively in 1932. He insisted on retaining the .30-06 Springfield round instead. This would utilize existing ammunition stockpiles already in military warehouses. This decision delayed production significantly, but ultimately proved fortunate. The powerful .30-06 cartridge provided excellent long-range performance. It delivered superior stopping power against enemy targets at all ranges. The Arisaka rifles traced their lineage back decades. Colonel Nariakira Arisaka created the original Type 30 design in 1897. This was developed to replace inadequate Murata rifles then in service. By World War II, Japanese forces primarily fielded 2 main variants. The Type 38 had been adopted in 1905 for general service. The Type 99 was introduced in 1939, the 2599th year of the Japanese calendar system. The Type 38 fired the 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed cartridge. A 139-grain bullet left the barrel at 2,500 feet per second. This generated approximately 1,650 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The Type 99 used the more powerful 7.7 by 58 mm cartridge instead. It fired a 182-grain bullet at 2,400 feet per second. This produced 2,300 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. Both Arisaka variants were bolt-action rifles with 5-round internal magazines. Loading required 5-round stripper clips inserted from above. The Type 38's exceptional 31.4-inch barrel length made it one of the longest infantry rifles ever fielded by any army. This contributed to excellent long-range accuracy on paper, but it proved extremely cumbersome in jungle combat conditions. Engagement distances in the Pacific rarely exceeded 100 yards. The Type 99 featured a shorter 25.9-inch barrel that was more manageable. But it arrived too late to fully replace the Type 38 in widespread service. The Arisaka action itself was remarkably strong mechanically. Post-war testing proved it stronger than the American Springfield, stronger than the British Lee Enfield, stronger than the German Mauser actions. The rifles featured an innovative safety mechanism that could be operated silently. The bolt design incorporated a gas escape system to protect shooters. This prevented injury in case of ruptured cartridge cases during firing. However, these engineering achievements could not overcome fundamental limitations. Manual bolt operation was becoming obsolete in an era of increasing firepower demands. The industrial disparity between America and Japan became starkly apparent in production figures. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories produced approximately 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory led production with 3.5 million rifles manufactured. Winchester Repeating Arms Company contributed 513,880 rifles to the war effort. International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson would add additional production during the Korean War years. Peak production at Springfield Armory reached 1,000 rifles per day by January 1944. Winchester achieved 600 rifles daily at their production height. This massive output ensured virtually every American infantry soldier carried semi-automatic rifles. Marines in the Pacific received them by mid-1943 as well. The U.S. military's allocation system prioritized frontline combat units above all others. The Marine Corps received 22,000 M1 Garands per month in early 1943. This occurred despite their initial reluctance to adopt the new rifle design. By the end of fiscal year 1942, the Marine Corps possessed 62,886 M1 Garands, though not all had reached frontline units yet in the pipeline. Japanese production presented a dramatically different picture entirely. From 1905 to 1945, Japan manufactured approximately 3 million Type 38 rifles. These came from multiple arsenals across the empire. Koishikawa Arsenal, later renamed Tokyo Arsenal, produced many. Kokura Arsenal manufactured thousands more. Nagoya Arsenal contributed significantly. Mukden Arsenal in occupied Manchuria added production capacity. Type 99 production from 1939 to 1945 reached roughly 3.5 million units total. These were manufactured at 9 different arsenals throughout the empire. 2 facilities operated outside Japan proper. Mukden Arsenal in Manchukuo produced rifles. Jinsen Arsenal in Korea added manufacturing capability. Despite these substantial numbers totaling over 6 million rifles, Japan never achieved necessary production rates. Many second-line troops still carried obsolete weapons. Garrison forces often lacked modern equipment. Naval infantry units frequently used older rifle models. This created serious logistical complications with 2 different ammunition types in simultaneous use. American M1 Garand production maintained remarkably consistent quality throughout the entire war period. Springfield Armory's quality control procedures rejected any rifle that failed strict accuracy standards. Any weapon that couldn't group within 5 inches at 100 yards was rejected immediately. Interchangeability of parts between rifles from different manufacturers was strictly enforced. Detailed specifications and gauging requirements ensured compatibility. A damaged M1 Garand could be repaired in the field, using parts salvaged from other rifles. This worked regardless of which manufacturer had produced the original weapon. The adoption of improved heat treatment processes in 1942 actually increased receiver strength. This made later production stronger than pre-war manufacturing. The finish evolved for practicality rather than mere economy considerations. The switch from blued steel to parkerizing improved corrosion resistance dramatically. This proved crucial in tropical environments where rust was constant. Walnut stocks gave way to birch and other hardwoods due to walnut shortages. But functionality never suffered from this change. Late war simplifications included stamped trigger guards replacing milled ones. But these changes were thoroughly tested to ensure continued reliability. Japanese manufacturing quality conversely deteriorated markedly as the war progressed relentlessly. Early Type 99 rifles featured remarkable innovations for their time. Chrome-lined barrels were actually the first military rifles with this feature. Anti-aircraft sights included folding arms for leading aerial targets. Dust covers protected the action from contamination. Integral wire monopods provided shooting stability. The finish was a deep blue that looked almost black. Stocks were made from quality Japanese hardwood with precise inletting. By 1944, these refinements had vanished under production pressure. Material shortages eliminated quality features one by one. Last-ditch rifles exhibited rough machining marks throughout. Simplified fixed rear sights replaced complex ladder sights. Wooden butt plates replaced metal ones. Inferior wood with poor fitting became standard. Some final production rifles lacked even basic finishing. Visible tool marks appeared on all metal surfaces. The chrome lining disappeared as chromium became scarce for military use. Monopods were eliminated entirely. Even the imperial chrysanthemum marking became crudely stamped rather than precisely rolled. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action provided multiple tactical advantages beyond simple rate of fire increases. After each shot, the soldier maintained his sight picture perfectly. Cheek weld remained constant on the stock. The rifle automatically cycled without disturbing aim. This meant faster target reacquisition. More accurate follow-up shots became possible. The operating rod was driven by gas pressure tapped near the muzzle. It cycled with sufficient force to function reliably even when fouled. Mud couldn't stop it. Sand didn't jam it. Volcanic ash from Pacific Islands couldn't prevent cycling. Carbon buildup from extended firing didn't cause malfunctions. The unblocked clip system sometimes drew criticism from soldiers. The distinctive ejection ping allegedly alerted enemies that the rifle was empty. But this system actually provided the fastest reload of any contemporary military rifle. A trained soldier could reload in under 3 seconds flat. This compared to 5 to 7 seconds for skilled users of stripper clips on bolt-action rifles. The clip ejection also provided immediate confirmation that the rifle was empty. Tactile feedback came through the action. Audible confirmation came through the distinctive ping sound. This prevented confusion that could occur with rifles that didn't indicate empty magazines clearly. The M1's weight of 9.5 pounds felt heavy by modern standards, but this helped manage the substantial recoil of the .30-06 cartridge effectively. Rapid, accurate follow-up shots became much easier. The rifle's length of 43.6 inches was well-balanced overall. Weight distributed evenly between the heavy barrel and solid wooden stock. The two-stage military trigger wasn't match-grade quality, but it provided consistent performance that soldiers could master with proper training. The break was predictable. Reset was positive. Accuracy potential exceeded most soldiers' skill levels. The Arisaka rifles suffered from inherent limitations of bolt-action operation that became critical in Pacific combat conditions. After each shot, the soldier had to manually cycle the bolt through 4 distinct movements. This broke the shooter's firing position completely. It disrupted sight alignment. 2 to 3 seconds were required even for well-trained soldiers. The Type 38's extreme length of 50.3 inches made it particularly unsuitable for jungle warfare conditions. Japanese soldiers found the rifle catching on vines constantly. It was difficult to swing onto targets in dense vegetation. Nearly impossible to use effectively in bunkers or fortified positions. The long barrel provided excellent long-range accuracy with minimal bullet drop. But this was a liability when combat ranges rarely exceeded 100 yards. Often engagements occurred at conversational distances in thick jungle. The 5-round magazine capacity meant Japanese soldiers had to reload 60% more often than Americans. They needed to reload after every 5 shots. Americans could fire 8 rounds before reloading. Loading via stripper clips required multiple steps. Opening the bolt came first. Positioning the clip correctly took practice. Pressing rounds down into the magazine while withdrawing the clip required coordination. Then closing the bolt to chamber a round. This process took 5 to 7 seconds under ideal conditions, much longer under combat stress or in awkward firing positions. The .30-06 Springfield cartridge used by the M1 Garand was already standard throughout the U.S. military. The M1903 Springfield rifle used it. The M1917 Browning machine gun fired it. The M1919 Browning machine gun used the same ammunition. The Browning automatic rifle fired identical cartridges. This commonality simplified logistics immensely throughout the supply chain. A single ammunition type could supply rifles, automatic rifles, and machine guns. The cartridge's rimless design fed reliably from clips, belts, and magazines. No feeding problems occurred with different weapon systems. American ammunition production was absolutely staggering by any measure. The Lake City Army ammunition plant alone could produce 200 million rounds annually by 1943. Frankfurt Arsenal added hundreds of millions more rounds. Denver Ordnance Plant contributed massive quantities. Other facilities across the nation added production capacity. Quality control ensured consistent ballistics across all manufacturers. M2 ball ammunition maintained velocity variation of less than 40 feet per second between different production lots. This consistency was crucial for accurate long-range shooting. Japanese forces faced a much more complex ammunition situation throughout the war. Units equipped with Type 38 rifles required 6.5 by 50 mm semi-rimmed ammunition exclusively. Those armed with Type 99s needed 7.7 by 58 mm rounds instead. The 6.5 mm round generated less recoil than larger cartridges. This allowed soldiers to carry more ammunition in their basic load, but it proved inadequate against covered positions. It lacked sufficient stopping power against determined enemies. The 7.7 mm round addressed these deficiencies with greater power, but it created a dual supply requirement that complicated logistics. This two-caliber system created persistent problems throughout the Pacific Campaign. Documented instances include the 23rd Infantry Regiment on Guadalcanal receiving wrong ammunition. They received 7.7 mm ammunition for their Type 38 rifles. This rendered both weapons and ammunition completely useless. Similar mix-ups occurred during the Philippines campaign repeatedly. Isolated island garrisons faced the same problems with supply confusion. The semi-rimmed design of the 6.5 mm cartridge occasionally caused feeding problems. Tropical conditions caused ammunition to corrode. This made chambering difficult or impossible in critical moments. When the U.S. Army's 164th Infantry Regiment arrived at Guadalcanal on October 13, 1942, they brought something revolutionary. This North Dakota National Guard unit carried M1 Garand rifles. The Marines, still armed primarily with M1903 Springfield bolt-action rifles, watched with mixed emotions. Envy and skepticism warred in their minds as Army soldiers unloaded their semi-automatic weapons from ships. During the climactic battle for Henderson Field on October 24–25, 1942, advantages became undeniably clear to everyone present. Staff Sergeant Mitchell Page fought alongside soldiers of the 164th throughout the battle. Though armed with a machine gun rather than a rifle, he witnessed their firepower firsthand. The volume of fire was unlike anything seen before in the Pacific. Private First Class James Cass of Company M, 164th Infantry, later recalled the intensity of that engagement. The Japanese came at American positions in waves. They were barely visible in the complete darkness. Only the glint of their bayonets revealed their presence. With M1 Garands, American soldiers could put 8 rounds into attacking enemies. This happened before the Japanese covered 30 yards of ground. Each rifleman was like a machine gun section in terms of firepower. American soldiers would fire, and the rifle cycled itself automatically. Then they fired again immediately. No working a bolt was required. No breaking sight picture occurred. Just squeeze the trigger and fire. Boom. Squeeze again, and fire again. Boom. 8 times before reloading became necessary. The 164th's companies were fed into the defensive line piecemeal. Japanese attacks developed across multiple positions simultaneously. Fresh Army troops reinforced Marine positions that were beginning to buckle under pressure. The devastating semi-automatic fire from these reinforcements helped stabilize the entire defensive line. Colonel Bryant Moore commanded the 164th Infantry Regiment throughout the battle. He reported that his men expended over 250,000 rounds of .30-06 ammunition. This occurred in just 2 days of savage fighting. Japanese bodies stacked up in front of positions held by the 164th. Many were killed by the rapid, accurate fire of M1 Garands. Marine Private Robert Leckie would later write the memoir, Helmet for My Pillow. He observed Army troops in action during this critical battle. Marines initially thought these soldiers were inexperienced. Green troops with their newfangled rifles seemed questionable. But when the Japanese charged in human waves, those Garands spoke with an unprecedented voice. It sounded like continuous roar rather than sporadic crack-crack of Springfield rifles. Sergeant Masao Watanabe of the 29th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Division Sendai, survived the October offensive at Guadalcanal. In his post-war memoir discovered in Japanese military archives, he wrote about the experience. Japanese soldiers were told Americans were soft. Their officers claimed that Yamato spirit would overcome material advantages. Military leaders assured them that one Japanese soldier was worth 10 Americans in combat. But when they charged American lines that October night, reality proved different. It was like running into a wall of lead. Every American soldier seemed to have an automatic weapon. Japanese Arisaka rifles operated the same way their fathers had used in the Russo-Japanese War. They felt like antiques compared to American firepower. Japanese soldiers would fire once, then work the bolt while taking cover, then fire again if still alive. In that same time, Americans had already fired 4 or 5 rounds accurately. Watanabe noted that Japanese tactics developed against Chinese forces proved suicidal against American firepower. Chinese opponents were often armed with older weapons. They frequently had limited ammunition supplies. The Banzai charge that had scattered Chinese conscripts melted away before American rifles. These weapons never seemed to stop firing. Japanese soldiers could not get close enough to use their bayonets effectively. Their supposed advantage in spirit and close combat meant nothing. They were shot down 50 meters from American defensive lines. Lieutenant Hiroshi Takahashi of the 230th Infantry Regiment provided another perspective. His letter was found on his body after a failed attack. The American automatic rifles were devastating beyond belief. Each soldier could fire as fast as Japanese light machine guns. When Japanese forces advanced, it sounded like attacking positions defended entirely by machine guns. Japanese soldiers fell before they could work their rifle bolts for a second shot. At Cape Gloucester in December 1943, Marines of the 1st Marine Division landed in torrential rain. They were now fully equipped with M1 Garands after their earlier experience on Guadalcanal. The island of New Britain presented horrific fighting conditions. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, author of With the Old Breed, later wrote about the M1's performance. That Garand was the most reliable piece of equipment they possessed. Rain came down like waterfalls for days. Mud sucked at soldiers like quicksand. But that rifle kept firing without fail. The Japanese, with their bolt-action rifles, couldn't match American rate of fire. When they tried to set up positions in dense jungle, Americans could put tremendous volumes of lead into the trees. Leaves would fall like rain from concentrated fire. Marine Sergeant John Basilone earned the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal. This was primarily for his actions with machine guns in defensive positions, but he also carried an M1 Garand as his personal weapon. He noted that the Garand gave every Marine the firepower of 3 men with bolt-action rifles. In jungle fighting, where glimpses of enemies lasted seconds, Being able to fire multiple shots without working a bolt meant survival. The difference between killing enemies or them escaping to kill Americans later. During the Battle of Saipan in June 1944, the largest Banzai charge of the Pacific War occurred. Over 3,000 Japanese soldiers assaulted American lines in a desperate pre-dawn attack on July 7th. Private First Class Harold Agerholm of the 4th Marine Division was armed with his M1 Garand. He helped repel this massive assault with devastating effect. Corporal John Miller recalled the intensity of that night attack. The Japanese came at American positions shoulder to shoulder. They were screaming like banshees in the darkness. American Garands never stopped firing. As fast as triggers could be pulled, shots rang out. The ping of empty clips ejecting was constant. It sounded like deadly music in the night. The Japanese, with their bolt-action rifles, couldn't match American volume of fire. They might get one shot off, maybe two if lucky. Then, American semi-automatic weapons cut them down. On Peleliu in September 1944, the 1st Marine Division faced Japanese forces who had learned from earlier defeats. Instead of Banzai charges, they defended from heavily fortified positions. Caves honeycombed the coral island. But even in defensive roles, bolt-action Arisakas proved inferior to American firepower. Marine Corporal R.V. Bergen recalled tactics that exploited American firepower advantages. When Marines spotted Japanese positions, they could saturate them with rifle fire. 4 or 5 Marines with Garands could put 40 rounds into a cave mouth. This happened in the time it took Japanese defenders to fire 5 or 6 shots back. Americans kept enemy heads down while other Marines maneuvered. Flamethrowers and demolitions could then eliminate positions. American training doctrine for the M1 Garand emphasized exploiting the rifle's semi-automatic capability. Accuracy remained paramount despite increased firepower. Training camps across the United States developed standardized programs. Fort Benning led infantry training. Camp Perry specialized in marksmanship. Fort Ord trained thousands of soldiers. Dozens of other facilities contributed to the war effort. Soldiers spent weeks mastering their rifles before deployment. The standard qualification course required engaging targets from 100 to 500 yards. Emphasis was placed on rapid target engagement. Smooth trigger control was essential for accuracy. The Army's Field Manual 23-5 specified performance standards. Basic Field Manual, U.S. Rifle, Caliber 30, M1 was the official guide. Soldiers should achieve sustained rates of 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute in combat. Training emphasized sight picture hold between shots. Maintaining proper sight alignment was crucial, since semi-automatic action didn't require braking position. Soldiers learned to fire, observe impact, adjust aim, and re-engage quickly. This took full advantage of the M1's rapid-fire capability. Ammunition allocation for training was generous by any contemporary standard. Basic trainees fired a minimum of 210 rounds during qualification courses. Additional ammunition was available for advanced training. Combat units preparing for deployment often fired thousands of rounds per soldier. This extensive live-fire training built muscle memory. Confidence levels proved invaluable in actual combat situations. The Marine Corps was initially skeptical of the M1 Garand design. Concerns about ammunition waste were prominent. Degradation of marksmanship standards was feared, but they eventually developed even more intensive training programs than the Army. Marine doctrine emphasized accurate volume of fire rather than spray and pray. Rapid aimed shots exploited the M1's semi-automatic action. This maintained the Corps' traditional marksmanship excellence. Japanese marksmanship training was rooted in samurai traditions of precision and discipline. The philosophy emphasized one shot, one kill, Ichigeki Hisatsu. This principle reflected spiritual beliefs about warrior focus. It also acknowledged practical limitations of bolt-action rifles. Japanese soldiers underwent extensive training at long ranges. The Type 38's exceptional accuracy at distance was considered a primary virtue. The Imperial Japanese Army's training manual stated key principles. The spirit of attack must be the primary weapon of infantry. The rifle and bayonet are merely extensions of the warrior's will. This emphasis on spiritual factors over material ones would prove catastrophic. American firepower superiority could not be overcome by fighting spirit alone. Japanese soldiers trained extensively in bayonet fighting techniques. Daily practice in kata-like movements was standard. The Type 38's exceptional length made it theoretically superior in bayonet combat. However, Pacific combat rarely offered the clear long-range shots for which Japanese soldiers had trained extensively. Jungle terrain of Guadalcanal, New Guinea, and other battlefields limited visibility to mere yards. The Banzai charges that had succeeded against poorly equipped Chinese forces met devastating failure. Colonial troops with obsolete weapons were different from Americans with semi-automatic rifles. The sound of massed M1 Garand fire became a psychological weapon in itself. The rapid, rhythmic crack of semi-automatic fire was unprecedented. The distinctive metallic ping of ejecting clips punctuated the violence. This had a profoundly demoralizing effect on Japanese forces who had never experienced such firepower. A captured Japanese training document from 1943 instructed soldiers about American weapons. The American automatic rifles create a sound like many machine guns firing simultaneously. Do not be discouraged by this volume of fire. Remember your spiritual superiority and press forward with determination. However, spiritual superiority proved inadequate against material reality. Japanese soldier Yukio Nakamura was captured on Saipan during the fighting. He told interrogators about the psychological impact of American firepower. "We were told Americans were cowards who relied on machines instead of warrior spirit. But their rifles that fired without stopping, it was like fighting against machines, not men. Our officers told us to charge with bayonets, but we were cut down before getting close enough to use them." Conversely, American troops gained immense confidence from their firepower advantage. Marine Corporal James Russell recalled the psychological boost. "Knowing you could put 8 rounds down range as fast as you could pull the trigger made you feel invincible. When the Japanese charged, you didn't panic. You just started shooting and kept shooting, until they stopped coming, or you heard that ping telling you to reload." At the squad level, the M1 Garand's advantage became even more pronounced throughout the Pacific campaign. Multiple semi-automatic rifles created devastating crossfire patterns that no bolt-action-equipped force could match. The devastating mathematics of warfare revealed themselves across Pacific battlefields through cold statistics. A dozen American soldiers with their rifles could unleash hell itself. 10 M1 Garand rifles paired with 2 Browning automatic rifles created a symphony of destruction. 400 aimed rounds screamed downrange every 60 seconds. 500 rounds when conditions allowed maximum sustained fire. Compare this to their enemy counterparts. Japanese squads struggled with their bolt-action Arisaka rifles. Well-trained soldiers worked their bolts with practiced precision. Even at maximum speed, they managed only 150 rounds per minute. Sometimes 180 if conditions were perfect. This gap changed everything about small unit combat. The disparity fundamentally rewrote the rules of engagement. American squads moved like clockwork, across hostile terrain. One fire team would establish devastating suppressive fire. Semi-automatic rifles barked continuously. Enemy heads stayed down behind cover. Meanwhile, the second team advanced methodically. They closed distance while protected by that wall of lead. Japanese squads found themselves trapped by their mechanical limitations. Bolt-action rifles demanded precious seconds between shots, working the bolt, ejecting the spent cartridge, chambering fresh ammunition. Those seconds meant death in Pacific combat. Fire and maneuver became an American specialty. Their weapons supported the tactic perfectly. Japanese forces discovered they could not generate sufficient suppressive fire, not while maintaining any hope of mobility. The mathematics became overwhelming at company-level formations. Picture 200 American soldiers in defensive positions. Each man possessed semi-automatic firepower. The combined effect created killing fields no human courage could overcome. Henderson Field on Guadalcanal proved this brutal reality. October 24th through 25th became a masterclass in American firepower superiority. Company G from the 164th Infantry Regiment wrote the textbook that night. 30,000 rounds of .306 ammunition disappeared into the darkness. 150 rounds per soldier on average. The night echoed with continuous semi-automatic fire. Yet American casualties remained surprisingly light. The mathematics told an inexorable story of technological dominance. Japanese battalion commanders faced impossible odds. 800 men in a Banzai charge met withering defensive fire. American companies could deliver 8,000 aimed rounds per minute. Even accounting for darkness and confusion, the volume was staggering. Fear affected accuracy, but not volume of fire. The M1 Garand created kill zones where courage alone meant nothing. Human bravery could not overcome mechanical reality. Semi-automatic fire superiority translated directly into strategic advantage. American island-hopping campaigns depended on this firepower edge. Landing forces hit enemy-held beaches with confidence. They knew they could establish beachheads against any counterattack. The M1 equipped infantry meant smaller forces could hold larger perimeters. This allowed rapid buildup of additional forces for breakout operations. Island after island, the pattern repeated itself with mechanical precision. Tarawa witnessed the slaughter. Kwajalein saw more of the same. Saipan became a killing ground. Guam fell to superior firepower. Peleliu turned into a nightmare for defenders. Iwo Jima proved the point again. Okinawa sealed the matter permanently. Japanese forces could not match American firepower output. They resorted to increasingly desperate measures as the war progressed. Banzai charges gave way to defense in-depth tactics. Even from fortified positions, the bolt-action rifles failed them. The slow rate of fire meant missed opportunities. American soldiers exposed themselves during assaults. Japanese defenders rarely could exploit these moments. Their rifles simply could not fire fast enough. The roots of Japanese tactical failure stretched back decades. Their stunning victory in the Russo-Japanese War created institutional blindness. 1904 through 1905 had validated their military philosophy. Japanese infantry with Type 30 and Type 35 Arisaka rifles had crushed Russian forces. Superior training and discipline had carried the day. Tactical innovation had overcome material disadvantage. The Battle of Mukden seemed to prove Japanese warrior spirit supreme. The siege of Port Arthur reinforced this dangerous lesson. Victory appeared to validate spirit over material factors. This success created a fatal flaw in Japanese military thinking. Officers who revered the Russo-Japanese War dominated the establishment. They saw that conflict as Japan's emergence as a great power. They failed to recognize that warfare itself had fundamentally changed. World War I had demonstrated the absolute dominance of firepower over elan. Machine guns had mowed down the bravest charges. Artillery had made traditional cavalry obsolete. But Japan had not participated significantly in that European slaughter. They failed to internalize its harsh lessons about modern warfare's reality. American adoption of the M1 Garand reflected hard-earned wisdom from French battlefields. General John J. Pershing had commanded the American Expeditionary Force. He witnessed automatic weapons devastating infantry attacks. Brave men died in their thousands against mechanical precision. In 1918, he issued a prophetic requirement. The soldier who can deliver the most accurate fire in the shortest time will dominate future battlefields. This statement launched the development process that would create the M1 Garand. The United States spent nearly 2 decades perfecting the design. Extensive trials tested every component. Industrial infrastructure for mass production was built simultaneously. By 1936, when the M1 received official adoption, America had created more than just a superior rifle. They had built an entire system for producing these weapons, maintaining them in field conditions, supplying them with ammunition, training soldiers to use them effectively. The Japanese eventually recognized their need for semi-automatic rifles. Development of indigenous designs began during the 1930s. Kijiro Nambu designed the Type 1 rifle with great care. Several gas-operated prototypes showed promise in testing. However, these efforts received criminally low priority in resource allocation. Aircraft development consumed enormous resources. Naval vessels demanded priority funding. Other programs were deemed more critical than infantry rifles. This proved to be a fatal miscalculation of strategic priorities. Most revealing was Japan's eventual attempt to copy the M1 Garand directly. The Type 4 rifle program, often mistakenly called Type 5, demonstrated their understanding. They managed to produce only 250 part sets total. Between 100 and 125 complete rifles were actually assembled before the war ended abruptly. The Type 4 was chambered for 7.7mm Japanese ammunition. It fed from a 10-round internal magazine. Loading required 2 5-round stripper clips. This proved that Japan fully understood the M1's advantages, but they lacked the industrial capacity for meaningful mass production. The mathematics of firepower revealed overwhelming American superiority in stark numbers. The M1 Garand firing M2 ball ammunition delivered 2,656 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. A trained soldier could fire 40 rounds per minute consistently. This translated to 106,244 foot-pounds of energy delivered per minute. Consider the bolt action, Type 99 Arisaka, by comparison. It fired 7.7mm rounds with 2,300 foot-pounds per shot. The practical rate of fire was 15 rounds per minute maximum. This delivered only 34,500 foot-pounds per minute, less than one-third the M1's devastating energy output. The .306 Springfield trajectory proved superior at typical Pacific combat distances. While having more drop than the 6.5mm Arisaka at extreme range, it excelled where fighting actually occurred. At 300 yards, an unusually long engagement distance in jungle warfare, the .306 dropped 13.5 inches from line of sight. Yet it retained 1,900 foot-pounds of energy at that distance. This remained sufficient to penetrate multiple layers of jungle vegetation. The round could still incapacitate enemy soldiers after passing through cover. The 6.5mm Arisaka dropped only 11 inches at the same range. However, it retained merely 1,100 foot-pounds of energy. This was often insufficient to penetrate cover and remain effective. U.S. Army Ordnance conducted definitive tests at Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1940. These controlled trials quantified the M1's overwhelming advantage in precise measurements. Soldiers equipped with M1 Garands consistently achieved 24 aimed shots per minute at 200 yards. Their accuracy remained at 90% hits on man-sized targets. Soldiers using M1903 Springfields, functionally identical to Arisaka operation, managed only 10 aimed shots per minute. Their accuracy dropped to 85% under identical conditions. In rapid-fire scenarios simulating sudden attack conditions, M1-equipped soldiers could engage 3 separate targets. Bolt-action users managed to engage only one target in the same time frame. Extended testing examined sustained fire over longer periods of continuous combat. After 5 minutes of uninterrupted firing, M1-equipped soldiers maintained 80% of their initial rate of fire. Bolt-action users dropped to 60% due to mounting fatigue. The physical demands of working the bolt repeatedly took their toll. The M1's semi-automatic operation required only trigger finger movement for each shot. Bolt-action operation demanded gross motor movements involving the entire arm and shoulder. These larger muscle groups fatigued more quickly under stress. Combat effectiveness degraded rapidly as engagement duration increased. Combat statistics from actual Pacific battles revealed telling patterns in ammunition expenditure. At Guadalcanal, Army units equipped with M1 Garands expended between 150 and 200 rounds per man per day. This occurred during heavy combat conditions when fighting was most intense. Marine units, still equipped with Springfield rifles, expended only 60 to 80 rounds per man. They faced similar combat conditions, but were limited by mechanical constraints. This difference did not represent ammunition waste by Army units. Rather, it demonstrated the M1's ability to deliver effective fire at fleeting targets. Japanese forces, by comparison, rarely expended more than 40 to 50 rounds per man per day. They were limited by both chronic ammunition supply problems and mechanical constraints. The bolt-action operation itself restricted consumption rates. Even when ammunition was readily available, the slow rate of fire limited how quickly it could be expended effectively. Captured Japanese after-action reports frequently cited ammunition shortages as a limiting factor. However, even when sufficient ammunition was available, the mechanical constraints of bolt-action rifles limited effective consumption. Working the bolt repeatedly while under fire proved extremely difficult. Many soldiers died with full magazines in their rifles. Japanese military documents captured throughout the Pacific War revealed increasing awareness of American firepower superiority. Reports from field commanders painted an increasingly desperate picture. Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake commanded the 17th Army on Guadalcanal during the crucial battles. His November 1942 report stated with brutal honesty the reality his forces faced. Enemy rifle fire has density and accuracy beyond our initial expectations. Each enemy soldier appears to be armed with an automatic weapon. Our forces cannot achieve fire superiority, even with significant numerical advantage. I recommend emphasis on night operations and infiltration tactics. This represents our only hope to negate the enemy firepower advantage. By 1944, Japanese tactical doctrine had evolved to acknowledge American material superiority completely. The instructions for the decisive battle issued to defenders of the Mariana Islands stated the new reality. The enemy's automatic rifles and machine guns create an impenetrable wall of fire during daylight hours. All attacks must be conducted at night or under cover of adverse weather conditions. Daytime movement invites immediate and total annihilation. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi proved himself the most brilliant defender Japan produced. His analysis of Iwo Jima's defensive requirements showed clear understanding of American advantages. Writing in January 1945, he stated the mathematical reality. The American automatic rifles are truly remarkable weapons. Each individual soldier possesses firepower equal to 3 or 4 of our riflemen. We must not waste precious lives in futile Banzai charges against such overwhelming firepower. Instead, we will make them pay dearly for every meter of ground. We will fight from carefully prepared fortified positions using defense-in-depth tactics. His defensive strategy avoided suicidal charges in favor of systematic resistance. This prolonged the battle significantly, but could not overcome fundamental American material superiority. The Japanese made several desperate attempts to increase their infantry firepower during the war. The Type 100 submachine gun was introduced in 1942. This weapon was intended to provide automatic fire capability to Japanese infantry units. However, production reached only about 27,000 units by war's end. This number was completely insufficient to make any strategic difference. The weapon also suffered from fundamental design limitations that reduced its effectiveness. It fired the relatively weak 8mm Nambu pistol cartridge. This lacked the range and stopping power needed for Pacific combat conditions. The submachine gun was effective only at very close ranges. More revealing was the Japanese effort to copy the M1 Garand rifle directly. When American forces captured the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in 1945, they made a startling discovery. The Type 4 rifle program represented a complete reverse engineering effort. Engineers at Yokosuka had disassembled captured M1 Garands completely. They had modified the basic design to use Japanese 7.7mm ammunition. The rifle fed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with standard 5-round stripper clips. The Japanese had even improved certain aspects of the original design. They used a rubber recoil pad for shooter comfort. They added a last-round bolt hold-open feature for faster reloading. However, Japanese industry proved completely incapable of mass-producing this complex design. While they had manufactured parts for approximately 250 rifles, only 100 to 125 had been assembled into complete weapons. The Type 4 program revealed that Japanese military engineers fully understood the M1's tactical advantages, but they lacked the sophisticated industrial infrastructure required to produce it in meaningful numbers. Beyond industrial limitations, Japanese military culture actively resisted emphasizing material factors over spiritual ones. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji served as a staff officer in multiple theaters throughout the war. Writing after Japan's surrender, he explained the cultural constraints. We knew the Americans had superior weapons, but to acknowledge this openly would have completely destroyed troop morale. We had to maintain absolute belief in our spiritual superiority. This remained true even as our soldiers were systematically mowed down by American automatic weapons. We could not admit material inferiority without admitting spiritual defeat. This cultural resistance extended directly into training protocols and priorities. Even as late as 1944, Japanese infantry training emphasized bayonet practice and night infiltration techniques. Rifle marksmanship received minimal attention in comparison. The official infantry manual devoted exactly 3 pages to rifle marksmanship fundamentals. However, it dedicated 12 full pages to spiritual preparation and bayonet fighting techniques. This imbalance reflected deep-seated beliefs about warfare's essential nature. These beliefs could not be easily overturned by technical realities or battlefield evidence. The emphasis remained on spirit and willpower rather than mechanical precision and firepower superiority. The Battle of Okinawa from April through June 1945 provided the ultimate test. American firepower faced Japanese determination on Japan's very doorstep. 180,000 American troops confronted 120,000 Japanese defenders. This became the bloodiest Pacific battle of the entire war. The Japanese under Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima had learned from all previous defeats. Instead of wasteful Banzai charges, they prepared elaborate defensive positions. Okinawa's rocky terrain provided excellent defensive opportunities. Natural caves were expanded into fortified strongpoints. Artillery positions were carefully camouflaged and protected. Yet even fighting from prepared defensive positions, the limitations of bolt-action rifles proved critical. When American forces advanced across open ground, Japanese defenders could rarely deliver sufficient volume of fire. Their Arisaka rifles simply could not generate enough bullets to stop determined attacks. Private First Class Desmond Doss served as a conscientious objector medic. He would receive the Medal of Honor for his heroic rescue efforts. Later, he described the sound of American rifles supporting his dangerous missions. The Garands were firing so rapidly, it sounded like one continuous roar. Our boys could keep Japanese heads down while I went out for wounded soldiers. If they had all been equipped with bolt-action rifles like the Japanese, I never could have saved those men. The volume of semi-automatic fire provided the suppression necessary for rescue operations under fire. On May 4, 1945, the Japanese launched their only major counteroffensive of the entire battle. 5,000 Japanese soldiers attacked American lines in a carefully coordinated assault. The attack was designed to break through to American rear areas. It began at 0430 hours, with the largest artillery barrage Japanese forces had managed in the entire Pacific War. 12,000 rounds fell in 30 minutes of concentrated bombardment. As Japanese infantry emerged from their concealed positions, they charged across open ground toward American lines. They met an absolutely devastating wall of American fire. The sound was unlike anything previously experienced in Pacific combat. Private First Class Martin Brennan of the 7th Infantry Regiment recalled the terrifying scene. They came at us in organized waves, but not the wild Banzai charges we had seen before. These were coordinated attacks with proper fire support. But our Garands never stopped firing. 8 shots, then ping as the clip ejected. Immediate reload, then 8 more shots. The noise was absolutely incredible. The Japanese, with their bolt actions, would fire once, maybe twice. Then our semi-automatic fire would cut them down before they could work their bolts again. It was systematic slaughter, despite their courage and organization. The attack shattered completely against American firepower with horrific Japanese losses. 4,000 Japanese soldiers died in the assault. American casualties totaled 714 killed and wounded. The rapid fire of thousands of M1 Garands, supported by automatic weapons and artillery, created killing fields where courage meant nothing. Mathematical reality overcame human determination through mechanical precision. Even when Japanese soldiers managed to reach American lines, the close-range firepower advantage of semi-automatic rifles proved decisive. Working a bolt-action rifle while under fire at close range proved virtually impossible. Sergeant William Manchester would later become a renowned historian. During the battle, he fought on Okinawa with the 29th Marines. He wrote extensively about the M1 rifle's crucial role. The M1 rifle was truly our best friend during those desperate days. In the absolute chaos of close quarters, combat being able to fire 8 times without working a bolt saved countless American lives. I personally witnessed Japanese soldiers trying to work their bolt actions while under intense fire. Their hands were shaking uncontrollably. They fumbled with the bolt mechanism, while our boys simply kept pulling triggers. The mechanical advantage was overwhelming in close combat situations. Planning for Operation Downfall assumed the M1 Garand would play the crucial role. Operation Olympic was scheduled to begin the invasion of Japan in November 1945. Military planners studying casualty rates from Okinawa calculated massive firepower requirements. American forces would need overwhelming superiority to overcome expected Japanese resistance on the home islands. Production plans called for 500,000 replacement M1 rifles specifically for the invasion operation. Springfield Armory and Winchester were increasing production to a combined 2,000 rifles daily by August 1945. International Harvester was scheduled to begin production at a third facility to meet demand. The ammunition requirement was absolutely staggering by any previous measure. Planners estimated needing 100 million rounds of .306 monthly. This was for rifle ammunition alone, not including machine gun requirements. The projection testified to the expected volume of fire from M1-equipped troops during the invasion. Intelligence estimates suggested Japanese homeland defense would include 2.5 million Arisaka rifles in military hands. Additionally, millions more would be distributed to civilian militia units throughout the islands. However, many of these were training rifles or obsolete models. Others were crude, last-ditch single-shot weapons of questionable effectiveness. The Type 99 substitute standard rifles being produced in 1945 were so poorly made that American intelligence questioned their safety. They might be dangerous to the user rather than the enemy. Quality control had completely broken down in Japanese weapons production. American planners calculated that each invasion beach would require massive preparation. Naval gunfire and aerial bombardment would suppress Japanese positions initially. Then assault troops with their M1 Garands would provide the sustained volume of fire needed. This would be necessary to overcome determined defenders in prepared positions. Studies of previous Pacific battles showed American forces with semi-automatic rifles suffered 40% fewer casualties. This was compared to projected casualty rates for troops armed with bolt-action rifles. The firepower advantage translated directly into lives saved and objectives achieved. The Japanese, recognizing their fundamental firepower disadvantage, planned to rely on desperate measures. Suicide tactics would be employed extensively. Civilians would be used as human shields. Close-quarters combat in urban areas would minimize rifle advantages where possible. Secret Japanese plans discovered after the war revealed the extent of their desperation. Bamboo spears would be issued to civilian militia. Suicide swimmers with explosive charges would attack landing craft. Programs to spread biological weapons were being developed. The Arisaka rifle, once the pride of the Imperial Army, had been relegated to just one component of a desperate last stand. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended the war before Operation Downfall could commence. Post-war analysis suggested American casualties could have reached 500,000 to 1 million. Japanese casualties would have numbered in the millions. The M1 Garand's firepower advantage would have been absolutely crucial. But the cost in human lives on both sides would have been terrible beyond imagination. The M1 Garand's success influenced military rifle development worldwide in the post-war period. The Soviet Union had struggled with limited production of its SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle during World War II. They developed the SKS carbine, directly influenced by captured M1 Garands. Chinese forces copied the Soviet design as their Type 56 carbine. France developed the MS-49, incorporating lessons from both the M1 Garand and their own pre-war experiments. Even Britain, traditionally conservative in small arms, adoption began developing semi-automatic rifles immediately after the war. They had been satisfied with their Enfield rifles during the conflict, but recognized the future belonged to semi-automatic fire. The Belgian FN-49 reflected American influence in its design. The Swiss Sturmgewehr 57 incorporated M1 lessons. The Italian BM-59 was essentially an improved M1 Garand. All reflected lessons learned from America's semi-automatic success in World War II. The M1 Garand continued its service through the Korean War, where it again proved superior to bolt-action rifles. Chinese and North Korean forces in the early stages used predominantly bolt-action weapons. American forces armed with M1 Garands and supported by automatic weapons repeatedly stopped massive Chinese human wave attacks. These were reminiscent of Japanese Banzai charges in their futility against modern firepower. The rifle served faithfully until gradually replaced by the M14 in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In a remarkable historical irony, the United States equipped the newly formed Japanese self-defense forces with M1 Garand rifles during the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had faced the weapon in combat now trained with it extensively. They experienced firsthand the firepower advantage their predecessors had faced in the Pacific. The JSDF received approximately 150,000 M1 Garands through American military assistance programs. Former enemies became allies, united by common democratic values. Japanese veterans interviewed during the 1960s consistently cited American firepower as the decisive factor. Particularly, the M1 Garand dominated their memories of defeat. Saburo Sakai was Japan's leading surviving fighter ace after the war. His assessment was brutally honest about the technological disparity. We could match American courage in every engagement. We could match American tactics through superior training. But we could never hope to match American firepower superiority. Every GI with his automatic rifle was worth 3 of our finest soldiers. The mathematics of warfare had changed fundamentally. Today, both the M1 Garand and Arisaka rifles are highly sought after by military collectors, though they are prized for completely different reasons. The civilian marksmanship program has sold over 500,000 surplus M1 Garands to American citizens since its inception. This makes it one of the most common military collectibles in existence. The rifle's distinctive ping has become absolutely iconic in popular culture. It features in countless war films and television shows. Video games reproduce the sound with careful attention to detail. The M1's reputation as the greatest battle implement ever devised remains unchallenged among World War II infantry weapons. Modern shooting competitions still feature M1 Garand matches with enthusiastic participation. The rifle proves remarkably accurate, even by contemporary standards. Precision shooting with vintage military rifles remains a popular hobby among collectors and competitors. Japanese Arisaka rifles, particularly those with intact imperial chrysanthemum markings, are prized collectibles. The chrysanthemum symbol of the emperor was typically ground off rifles before surrender. This makes intact examples extremely rare and valuable among collectors. Modern testing has actually proven the Arisaka action to be exceptionally strong. It is stronger even than the famous Mauser or Springfield actions in controlled tests. But this mechanical strength could not overcome the fundamental disadvantage of bolt-action operation in rapid-fire situations. Interestingly, both rifle types have seen combat in the 21st century. M1 Garands have appeared in Middle Eastern conflicts supplied decades ago through military aid programs. Arisaka rifles have been documented in use by insurgent forces in Afghanistan and Myanmar. This serves as testament to the fundamental durability of both designs even if tactically obsolete. There on that October night at Henderson Field in 1942, something profound occurred. Private Robert Youngdeer of the 164th Infantry Regiment joined thousands of other American soldiers. They demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of semi-automatic rifle fire against determined enemies. They proved a fundamental truth about modern warfare that would echo through history. Technological superiority backed by industrial production capacity could determine battle outcomes. This remained true regardless of human courage or spiritual determination on either side. The M1 Garand delivered 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute consistently. The Arisaka managed 15 to 20 at maximum. 8 rounds before reloading versus 5 rounds maximum. Semi-automatic operation versus manual bolt manipulation under fire. These created walls of fire that could stop Banzai charges in their tracks. Single shots required breaking sight picture to chamber the next round manually. These mathematical realities multiplied across millions of individual firefights throughout the Pacific. From Guadalcanal's steaming jungles to Okinawa's rocky caves, the pattern repeated endlessly. Superior firepower determined tactical outcomes with mechanical precision. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto led his charge that October the 24th, 1942. His Type 38 Arisaka rifle represented Japanese military tradition. He did not survive to see the dawn break over Henderson Field. His rifle, with its exceptional accuracy and admirable construction, could not overcome reality. The smooth bolt action and strong receiver proved insufficient against semi-automatic fire. Found after the battle, his weapon contained 3 rounds remaining in the magazine. He had managed to fire only twice while advancing 100 yards. The concentrated fire of M1 Garands had cut him down before he could effectively engage. Around him lay dozens of his soldiers in the gray dawn light. Most had full or nearly full magazines in their Arisaka rifles. They had been systematically cut down before they could return effective fire. Courage and determination had proven insufficient against mechanical precision. The story of the M1 Garand versus the Arisaka rifles tells the larger truth about World War II in the Pacific. Courage and determination, while admirable and necessary, could not overcome the simple arithmetic of firepower superiority. The United States had produced 5.4 million M1 Garands by war's end. This ensured that virtually every American rifleman possessed devastating semi-automatic firepower. Japan, despite producing over 6.5 million rifles, total never escaped bolt-action limitations. They never could match the sheer volume of aimed fire that semi-automatic rifles produced. General George S. Patton's famous assessment was not mere hyperbole, but mathematical fact. The M1 Garand truly was the greatest battle implement ever devised by military science. From Guadalcanal's steaming jungles, where the rifle first proved its worth in Army hands, the pattern was established. To the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, where Marines used it to break seemingly impregnable Japanese strongpoints. From the monsoon-soaked horror of Cape Gloucester to the desperate urban combat anticipated for Japan itself. The M1 Garand proved itself far more than just another rifle. It was genuinely a war-winning weapon that gave American forces a decisive technological edge. This advantage proved crucial in the most brutal theater of the world's most terrible war. The distinctive ping of an ejecting en-bloc clip became the actual sound of American victory. That sound meant 8 enemy soldiers would never reach American defensive lines. It meant another Japanese position had been effectively suppressed by superior firepower. It represented another island secured and another step taken toward Tokyo Bay. Against this mechanical precision, the bolt-action Arisaka fought bravely but futilely. For all its undeniable virtues of strength and accuracy, it was fighting tomorrow's war with yesterday's technology. The fundamental limitation could not be overcome through courage alone. In the final analysis, the Pacific War was decided not by any single weapon or individual battle. Rather, it was won by the cumulative effect of American industrial might and technological superiority applied systematically. The M1 Garand stood as perhaps the most visible symbol of this overwhelming advantage at the individual soldier level. Every GI or Marine equipped with an M1 possessed the practical firepower of 3 enemy soldiers. This was an advantage that no amount of spiritual training or warrior tradition could hope to overcome. The Japanese soldier, brave as he undoubtedly was, could work his rifle bolt only so fast under fire, and in modern warfare rate of fire multiplied by accuracy equaled survival on the battlefield. The Arisaka rifles now rest respectfully in museums and private collections worldwide. They are properly respected for their quality construction and historical significance. The M1 Garand likewise has passed into military history, though many still function perfectly on rifle ranges across America. But, in their time, during the desperate struggle across the vast Pacific theater, one weapon system was clearly and definitively superior to the other. The semi-automatic rifle had made every American soldier a complete base of fire unto himself. That individual advantage multiplied across the enormous expanse of the Pacific theater helped ensure Allied victory. The last word belonged not to courage or spiritual preparation, but to mechanical precision. Gas-operated semi-automatic fire, delivered with devastating accuracy, decided the matter. 8 rounds with 1 pull of the trigger for each shot. Before that distinctive metallic ping announced it was time to reload and continue the deadly work of war.